That's a nice little theme. I like that. Um, hey, y'all. Eric Scott Reed here. First, thank you to Gail Boyd for making this happen. I think it's a fantastic uh, way to keep the music out there, keep artists relevant and current with what's going on. Um, and playing that theme, in the key of A major, for those of you who might not have perfect or even relative pitch, I can sort of just piggyback right off of that and go right into the nitty gritty, the meat of some of the things that I want to discuss today, or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. And hello to everyone. Thank you for joining. I think the past 10 years for me have been I've been in a season of a couple of seasons. I'm in my healing season now. Starting back in 2015 was kind of where things all started to just go right into the toilet with the emergence of Donald Trump as a political player. And that was the catalyst for my religious deconstruction, the deconstruction of my faith. And then after that, just this weird, funky place I was in personally, musically, and just 360 degrees of just malaise. And then COVID, and COVID, which is kind of how we all got here. Thank you once again, Gail, for being so quick to respond to the circumstance to create something like this. I think everything that seems to happen now, at least for me, is a response largely in part to COVID, as well as other major catastrophic events. And, once COVID hit, just like every other artist, every other jazz artist in the world, we found ourselves without gigs, but with a whole bunch of time. Now we were, we all have passive income, publishing, royalties, things like that, where you're not actually or actively going out and performing in front of audiences. Teaching, we were still able to do remotely, not as fun, not as engaging, but you do what you have to do. But this also impacted how we began to perform. And one night at about 11 o'clock, maybe midnight, I decided I was going to just turn on Facebook and just play some solo piano for the folks. And I just was doing that because I knew I needed something. And I knew that music lovers would also appreciate that too. I think one of the most important takeaways for me as a result of COVID was, okay, what do? We pivot. We have to figure it out. Nobody's giving up. Nobody's throwing in the towel. We're pivoting because we have to survive. We still have to eat. And so I said, okay, I don't have gigs, but I have time. And then I found out that I now have the time to practice in all those ways that I made excuses for not having time to practice. Because once you become a professional, you don't have the same amount or energy, the amount of time or the same amount of energy to put into your craft, because now it's about going out and making a living, which requires a level of practice, preparation, travel, getting to the gig, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas that's a 7 or 8 hour period that I could be at the piano, right? But now here I am with all of this time. And none of us were getting evicted from our homes because, the government had said, hey, y'all got to cool that out. And people don't have jobs. People, companies have closed and all that kind of stuff, especially for the gig industry. So fortunately, there was some grace given. And so I was able to take advantage of these hours of availability and say, okay, well, I've always wanted to work on this and this and this. I'm not really comfortable with how I sound in G flat, and I'm not really comfortable with how I sound at that tempo. I really could work on 96 beats per minute, just learning how to relax and be articulate. I really could work on, 203 beats per minute and get those tempos together. And so I started with, I went back to the basics. And I started playing through these old Tin Pan Alley, Great American Songbook tunes. And it's all through COVID that brought me to where I am with this release of my new record, Out Late, which is coming out May 16th on all formats, including LP. Very excited about this project. It features Eric Alexander, Nicholas Payton, Peter Washington, and Joe Farnsworth. And that was a 2-year process of getting those guys together because, once things started to open up, people started to become busy again, fortunately. And we also had still these additional alternative venues as well. So we were able to expand a certain kind of way. But getting the 5 of us together was no easy feat because everyone's very, very busy. So there was like a week in the year where the stars and the moon and the planets and the schedules aligned. And we were able to come together at Smoke Jazz Club in New York City and perform for a week. And I was entering into a new arrangement with Paul Stash and Smoke Sessions Records. And I said, for this first record of this new chapter, amongst many new chapters, which I'll get into, I really wanted to record these guys, but I wanted to do something a little different than what people would have expected us to do, because we're of a certain generation of musicians, we're of a certain age, and people know our shared musical experiences. We all came up under many of the same icons and legends in the music, and we watched them leave here as well. And then we've watched ourselves move into positions of, elders in the village. So it's been a very interesting journey. And this sort of sub journey, or this little trip inside of the lifelong journey, like I said, of these past 9-10 years. So the new record is called Out Late, and it references, obviously, late night activity. Specifically, they're the guys. Look at those handsome cats. It obviously references late night activity. Jazz music is always, it's played in clubs and concert halls after dark and hanging out late. And also it sort of references just nightlife in general, just, being out and walking the street. And every major city has its own special look. Chicago, Tokyo, Paris, all of these cities, they all have their own indigenous offering of nightlife or late night or out late activity. But another part, and this is probably one of the most fascinating and interesting parts of my journey, the title Out Late also references me being able to finally accept and embrace my whole person, including my sexuality as a queer Black man. And it's not something that I ever struggled with regard to knowing. It was the existing. I was never confused about my sexuality. The issue was how I was going to reconcile that with my family life. How was I going to reconcile that with my church culture? How was I going to reconcile that with being a jazz musician? In the 1980s and early 1990s, I was part of the young jazz lions. We were all these new young hip cats wearing all these great suits, and working everywhere. Everybody had bands, everybody had gigs. We were touring all over, but it was very much dominated, not uncommon, by men. And there's a certain energy and behavior that also accompanies that type of environment of this very alpha male toxic masculinity. And the only musicians that I knew at that time that were openly queer were Fred Hirsch and Andy Bay. Rest in peace, Andy Bay, who just passed a few days ago. And they were both HIV positive. So not just the stigma of being gay, but also being gay and HIV positive at the height of the AIDS epidemic. At 19 and 20 years old, that wasn't going to fly for me. There was no way, considering the circles I was moving in, was I ever going to be able to feel comfortable and safe in certain spaces. And I was working with some very high profile musicians. I was working with Freddie Hubbard and Joe Henderson and Wynton Marsalis. And I started working with Buster Williams, and I working with a lot of artists. And, you know, some of the conversations that you could hear amongst some musicians were just really awful. They were disgusting. And I heard the things that people used to say about James Williams, for instance. And I knew that people were kind of looking at me sideways anyway, because there were always rumors or speculations or whatever it was. But my concern was, thank you so much for that, Gail. I appreciate you. Proud of me for speaking my truth. You know, it's easier to do now at my big age of 54. And some people, quite a few people actually, have said, Eric, you're so brave. And I always push back against that, partly because of self-esteem issues that I'm still grappling with in therapy. It would have been brave at 20 when I had much more to lose. At 54, I don't feel it's brave. I just feel it's authentic. I don't feel it's brave because I've done the things. I've established myself. I'm who I am. And so it's cool. The problem is we're now living in a society where we're seeing the rise of fascism, and all of a sudden being homophobic is becoming an in thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe it is brave. I don't know. But all that to say, you can't unring a bell, because I've come too far and worked too hard to go back. Not going to happen. Hey, Antoinette, how you doing? Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thank you for calling me great. That's very kind of you. I appreciate you. So again, this journey has been a series of journeys. And I have encountered so many people since I came out, which is a term I'm not so crazy about, but it is what it is, 3 years ago, who have said, Eric, I'm so happy for you. And, you know, instinctively, ultimately, inherently, I've always known that the people that really were my ride or die were going to embrace that. It wasn't so much other people I was concerned about as much as it was me. I had to accept me, and I couldn't because of the dogma of religion. I was afraid of going to hell because that's what, you know, we're taught in the Christian church. So this album, Out Late, is a celebration. Sure, love you, my friend. Love you right back, Brian. Good to see you, buddy. Out Late is a celebration. Can I play it? is a key I'm still working on. Gail's theme is in A major. And that's one of the reasons that, like I said, COVID had such a profound impact on me, because it made me pivot in a very positive way. Like I mentioned before, I was able to practice more and be more diligent and more focused and more specific. And one of the things I started with was My Melancholy Baby. And I have this app. Thank you so much for all my folks over there at Smoke. Can't wait for it to come out. Joe Locke. I'm usually not one for literature, but this is beautiful, Reed. Joe Locke, one of the first musicians I met when I moved to New York City. And I saw this man pounding these vibraphones. I said, what is going on? What is going on? Joe, you and I still haven't really, we haven't done enough. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm in my healing era. So I want to take advantage of this. I hope I get a chance to connect with you. So I have this app, Drum Genius. And I just started putting it on these random tempos, and this is what I practiced with. And I slowed it down, I sped it up. Thank you, April. Thank you so much for making this happen. Slowed the tempos down, sped them up, and took the songs through all the keys. And that's how I wound up with the composition Delightful Daddy. I haven't practiced it enough, but I got to get it together by Friday, because we're playing the release. How's it going? Oh gosh. Something like that. That was really raggedy. But that's basically the contrafact of My Melancholy Baby. So Out Late, again, is the culmination, it's the celebration of me. And you can see on the album cover, Gail, if you wouldn't mind popping up there one more time. You can see on the album cover, I am just elated. Look at my face. I look like a little kid. I'm experiencing my 20s all over again. And if you go and you look at recordings from the 1990s, when I'm on the cover, I didn't smile like that because I didn't have that kind of joy. And I'm next to all of these wonderful musicians, Nicholas Payton, Peter Washington, Joe, Eric, all of us. And I think I can say this safely, that we've all got some similar lived experience, not just similar musical experiences, but also similar lived experiences. We've been through a lot. There's a few divorces in that photo. We've been through it. A lot of water under the bridge. And, I think what you see is men of a certain age experiencing renewal, experiencing joy, true happiness without the external expectations of what the scene or the culture or society feels you should experience. We're all really, truly coming into ourselves. Speaking for myself, I know that I am. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm in the best shape of my entire life. And I'm experiencing my 20s the way I was supposed to, at least as far as I'm concerned. Or I'm experiencing joy in life the way I was supposed to. And it's all manifested in my music and in my emotion. People see me, people who have known me for years, and they say, Eric, you just seem so happy. Because for years I was not. I was miserable. I was literally faking it. Now, I'm not talking about my sexuality. I'm talking about happiness, joy, what people were supposed to expect from someone who was working 8 days a week in New York City, money in all four pockets, living in a wonderful apartment on Strivers Row, and working everywhere and recording. And of course, that person's successful in jazz music. That person should be happy. But I was not. I was depressed for 2 years. And then I finally moved out of New York City in 2008, moved back to California, and had to go through a whole thing. So I'm in my healing stage now, and I'm happy as ever, and I'm so grateful to Paul Stash for continuing to bring me into Smoke Sessions, Smoke Jazz Club, and for recording me, and to you, Gail, and to all the people who really worked hard to stand by artists and the music and the jazz industry that we love so much, to keep it alive and to keep young musicians to continue to have a place for jazz musicians to grow and feed into and create and express themselves. I mean, this is really, it's a scary time to be alive. It's also a wonderful time to be alive. So there's a song called Time is Filled with Swift Transition. There's a line of a gospel song. Yeah, I'm excited about the future, my future. It doesn't look great politically, but I'm here. I'm here for it. I have learned from the mistakes of the past, not just my own, but of our elders of America. You know, we're not going back. They're trying everything they can do to activate us, to act a fool. It's not going to work. We've been down this road before. Oops, I thought I put that on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that. Yeah, we've been here before. Gail Boyd. What is the role of jazz musicians during this time of political turmoil? I like to call on the words of Nina Simone. Nina said, I'm paraphrasing, that it's the job of the artist to reflect what's going on in the times. For me, I know I have to just keep creating, because music brings about joy. People lose themselves in art. People lose themselves in music. Music doesn't solve problems. Music doesn't stop wars. Music doesn't topple dictatorships. But at the very least, music continues to bring joy. The more I emit, just beauty. I can do that all day. And if that provides people with just a little bit of peace and solace, then I'm here for it. That's it, Antoinette. Hold the God's unchanging hand. We shall overcome someday. Doesn't look like it, but we got to keep fighting. What is the alternative? I'm here, and I'm here for it. Come for me. I got something for you. I'm not afraid anymore. Got nothing to be afraid of. Only one life to live. I have a song, The Weirdos. Oh gosh. That's one of the songs that's on Out Late. And I wrote that for my partner and I. We've been together 2.5 years. We could not be more unalike. We literally could not be more unalike. Raised differently, raised in different generations, The only thing we have in common is African ancestry, and we're both born in the same month. Aside from that, we're as different as night and day. And one day he said to me, he said, you know, we're just weird. I said, is that all it is? Because I'm finna strangle you. 2.5 years later. 2.5 years later. I would not have had the perspicacity to endure that kind of stick-to-itiveness years ago. And I had 2 long-term relationships. I was married, and I kept marrying stubborn people, or kept getting into relationships with stubborn people. I don't want to say stubborn women, because I don't want to put women in a bad light. I don't want to paint them in a bad light. But also, being bisexual at that time, there was no real room to be completely upfront about it. You know, the grace and the tolerance just wasn't there. And I think I kept winding up in situations where I was just poorly matched with bullheaded personalities, versus now with somebody who's just chill, cool, just very, very different from me. I don't know. I hope you've enjoyed this. That's my time is wrapping up. Yeah, I see there. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed me sharing my story about my journey. I'm sure. Sorry about that. My phone should be off. Also have your own COVID stories, your own stories about what the last 9 to 10 years have been like for you. I can only imagine that there's some shared experience. And I'd be interested to hear, you know, what other people have been going through. Because I've been kind of insular, because I've had to protect my peace. I've had to protect my heart and my mind. And I've kind of had to go deep into myself so that I could emerge whole and healthy. And like I said, I'm just excited about the future, because I'm ready to fight now. I wasn't ready to fight back then. Herb Harris, hey, we've known rivers. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And they run deep. Yeah. If you get one takeaway from this live, is that I'm finally happy. I'm in my happy place. And I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad to have been able to stay in contact with somebody like Sheila Anderson. Sheila Anderson and I have been friends since about 1995 or 6. And she's been a rock, and we've gone through it. That boat's been doing like that. But, you know, a mainstay. Don't have too many people like her. I don't. And she and I also, we're both Geminis, so we have a lot of similar qualities. And we don't wear each other out. So yeah, so that's kind of it. I hope you found my story interesting. It's definitely interesting to me, because I'm still living it. And please don't forget about the new record coming out May 16th, out late on Smoke Sessions. And I hope you all enjoy it. We will be playing at Smoke Jazz Club in June, doing a release party with Nicholas and Eric. Joe and Peter can't make it, but it'll be Desron Douglas and Willie Jones III on drums at the end of June. And just a whole bunch of things down the road. Things are looking up. Everything's coming up roses. So yeah, my little Ethel Merman imitation for those of you of a certain age. Anyway, I think is there more? Are there any more questions? Are we out of time, Gail? Am I good? Am I bad? I'll play.